The first field lacrosse game played in BC was an 1886 challenge match between teams representing Vancouver and Victoria. The game was played at Beacon Hill on August 28th, and the newspaper reported, although the Victoria team showed the best form, the result was in favour of the visitors. By 1890, a BC Lacrosse Association had been formed, and 3 clubs, Victoria, Vancouver, and New Westminster, began an intercity competition, with the local games being played at the Oak Bay Park, located where Windsor Park is today. Victoria had a couple of BC championship-winning teams like this 1894 Victoria Lacrosse Club. With successes like these, the game quickly caught on, and local teams were formed. Here's our old friend Tulip Foster, Victoria's first sports promoter whom we inducted into the Hall of Fame 2 years ago. He's back row center with his Tulips from James Bay. Tulip was the caretaker of the Caledonia grounds, where he would coach the boys in whichever sport was in season. In 1901, senior amateur teams across Canada competed for the first time for the Minto Cup. By 1904, lacrosse had turned pro and they took possession of that trophy. Then in 1910, the Mann Cup was donated for the Senior Amateur Canadian Championship. Toronto won it first, but then the Vancouver Athletic Club held it for the next 4 seasons. In the First World War, the competition was reduced to the 3 West Coast cities until the arena opened and the best players were recruited for the intercity Shamrocks. Here in Victoria, the Royals made arrangements to use a piece of property near Cook and Pembroke to play their games and promote lacrosse among the boys. That field became known as the Royals Athletic Field, now Royal Athletic Park. During World War I, the field was fenced in and leased to the Foundation Shipbuilding Company, which had opened plants on the Inner Harbour. They promoted sport among their employees, sponsored Victoria teams, and provided work for some outstanding athletes. The Foundation lacrosse team went undefeated during the 1919 season to win the BC title and ownership of the Mann Cup. However, the war was just over, and the Canadian Lacrosse Association re-established a national Mann Cup championship with a 9-team tournament in Winnipeg. The Foundations, having thus given up the cup, then extended their unbeaten streak to win the Mann Cup twice in 1 year. Yes, that's Lester Patrick standing second from the right. Each team had to supply a ref, and Lester, not yet quite the Silver Fox, was the Victoria official. Pro lacrosse returned after the war, but Victoria didn't have a franchise, so some of the Foundation players left to play on the mainland. But there was a strong local league, and 2 teams, the Sons of Canada and Sydney, must have set some sort of attendance record when they played a league fixture in Tacoma. This news item states that 56,500 paid admissions and more than 60,000 people were at the grounds of the new stadium on July 4th, Independence Day. By the late 20s, the game diminished and box lacrosse took its place in the 1930s. Supporters like Harry Sargison, Tom Rickinson, and Bob McGuinness organized the first boxla teams in the city and built a dirt floor box at the east end of Athletic Park. The game caught on. The city set aside land in Beacon Hill and Vic West parks for 2 more boxla courts. The Athletic Park location, which was sort of illuminated for night games, didn't last long before being relocated in Stevenson Park. 2 junior teams, Owl Drug and Douglas Tire, as well as 3 senior clubs, played their games in the Dust Bowl. It was there that Roy Woolsey's name first became associated with the sport. He was involved with early organizers of the Victoria Box Lacrosse Association, such as Everett Taylor, Johnny Johnson, and Stan O'Kell. Later, Charlie Thomas, Fred Harding, Don Hucking, Alex McDonald, and Doug Fletcher came along. The 1937-38 finals of the Dominoes Basketball Championship were held in one of the newer Willows Exhibition buildings. It had been renovated and renamed the Sports Center, with a fine wooden floor and good seating for 2,000. So the lacrosse boys left the outdoor dirt and moved indoors for 2 or 3 seasons. The league grew as teams from JBAA, Alert Service, United Services, and the Jokers battled in the senior circuit, while McLean's, Owl Drug, and Douglas Tire scrapped in the intermediate division before crowds of up to 700 fans. But then the Willows Arena fire also destroyed the Sports Center building. By then, the war was over and the Stevenson box had been paved. Senior B games drew large crowds as outdoor lacrosse flourished in Victoria. Teams like the Jokers, Navy, Foul Bay, Tillicums, and Nanaimo now battled it out for the Island and BC Championships. Everybody who was associated knew Roy from his hey-ha-hey holler and that he was a longtime city policeman in the days when they walked the town in bobby helmets. But just who were the Jokers? Well, Victoria was pretty quiet in Roy's early days as a cop. Some people referred to it as a cemetery with streetcars. There had been no nightclubs or bars since Prohibition before World War I. There were a couple of government liquor stores, but you couldn't buy a glass of beer in town. If you wanted to quench your thirst legally, you'd have to go to one of the roadhouses in Esquimalt, like the Tudor, the Halfway House, or the End House. Of course, any cabbie could find you a bootlegger like Dutchy Reed and George Patton, or take you to a blind pig. To get around that little legal obstacle, there were the service clubs, like the Vets of France, Army, Navy, and Air Force, and the British Public Schools Club, better known as the Jokers. They sold drink tokens to their members and guests. This fooled no one among the boys in blue, and especially not Officer Woolsey. It's been said that he had some of these establishments on his beat, and that all he had to do was hint that a worthy cause like lacrosse needed funds, and managers like George Joker Patton would open their wallets. Hence the name Jokers. And they won the BC Intermediate title and then stepped up to the Senior B ranks against the powerful Alert Service, James Bay, and their rival Foul Bay Club. Senior B lacrosse and Roy continued on at Stevenson. This 1945 team were the BC champions, and then when the arena opened, the best players were hijacked, that is, recruited, for the Intercity League Shamrocks. Roy stuck to his Senior B Jokers right through the 1950s heydays of the Rocks, but in the 1960s, when the Shamrocks roller coaster ride hit the downhill, Roy worked quietly as a director in the background to help them through. He was also there for the kids, as an executive member and president of the Greater Victoria Box Lacrosse Association, backing Victoria Minor Lacrosse, and later at the start of the McDonald Juniors when they had their Minto Cup winning years in the 70s. After more than 30 years of promoting lacrosse as a coach, manager, sponsor, executive member, fundraiser, ticket seller, program producer, and publicity pusher, Roy was the second person honored at the 1973 Victoria Sports Celebrity Dinner with the Distinguished Service Award. But Roy was not about to rest on those laurels and continued to work in lacrosse and for other benevolent causes. Several years after the Jokers' name had disappeared from the lacrosse scene, the retired players held a reunion in 1987. It was around the time of Roy's 80th birthday, and he was there to cut the cake with Sonny Vickery and Whitey Wakeland ready to grab the first piece.
For his 4 decades of dedication to the sport he loved, we now induct into the Greater Victoria Sports Hall of Fame in the Builder category, Mr. Lacrosse Roy Woolsey.